Good morning and welcome to the 2022 Master Trader Program with Mark Minervini. My name is Bob Weissman. I'll be your moderator throughout the entire event. We welcome you to our 13th presentation of the Master Trader Program. Hold on one second for me, guys.
Recording in progress.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon or good evening. Welcome to the 2022 Master Trader Program with Mark Minervini. My name is Bob Weissman. I'll be your moderator throughout the entire event. Also, want to just take a few moments here to go over some of the details and information and rules of the event for the next 5 days. You will be using the same ID link and password to get into any of the events. That includes the morning sessions here in New York, as well as the evening replay sessions. Do wish to welcome you from individuals that we have from roughly 70 countries around the world, every time zone represented. So we welcome you and your efforts and your commitment to learn how to become a great trader. And also, this being our 13th year, this is something that we're so excited about. Every weekend of this year, or these 2 weekends in this case, are my personal favorite weekends of the year. I do want to repeat that we do have every day a 9 a.m. New York time, Eastern Standard Time presentation start time. And then we do have a replay of the morning session again at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each evening. So that's for the Saturday and Sunday curriculum days. On the live trading day, day 5, there will only be the one presentation time. Of course, I'll be going over these types of details throughout the event, all 4 days, but the live trading day is a one-time presentation. If you do have any connectivity issues, sound issues, or problems, we've used Zoom for a few years now. I can tell you it is incredibly rare to have something like that happen, but the easiest thing to do is just to log off, log back on. We also send an email to you suggesting to have a backup plan in case you have any internet connection problems, whether it's a cell phone or iPad or another location, friend's house, university, Starbucks. All those are other places that you generally can have as a backup plan. Also, just to share with you, we did send the final itinerary to you this week as well. It is about 5 hours for each of the sessions. And that is to say from 9 a.m. here to roughly 2 o'clock. Of course, different material, different days will tweak that number a bit. With that, also tomorrow will be a Q&A session, as you saw in your itinerary. With regards to questions, I will tell you, having done this 12 previous years, we know what most of your questions are, and you're going to get the answers to most of your questions during Mark's presentation. So I will share with you, much of it will be covered. However, of course, we know everybody does have their own questions. The best thing to do would be to have a couple things, them pre-written down perhaps on a Word document. So then you will be cutting and pasting that right into the chat box. That's how we'll be receiving the questions from you. Also, as we go through the entire presentation, it's obviously normal for you to have questions on a particular section or page. We will be able to go back to any page you want. So I do highly recommend you record the page number of where you have the question, as well as, of course, what your question is. But do realize Mark will be able to go back to any page you want, and that's not a problem. The chat box for here is only for kind of questions related to connectivity or issues or some things of that nature. Not a place for you to be asking questions during the presentation. Mark is not going to be answering questions while he's presenting. That's going to be for the dedicated question and answer sessions. Again, one is scheduled for tomorrow. A second one is scheduled for next Saturday. And then a final one will be during the live trading day. So you'll have plenty of time to ask questions and get answers to them. One quick thing with the room presentation settings, there is in your upper right corner of your screen, your presentation screen, there is a view icon, and I think the fit to 100% just gives you the biggest presentation. Of course, you have your workbook right in front of you, but that will give you the biggest presentation viewing area. You can play around with those settings on your own. Obviously, also just wish to thank you for your commitment to learn, but this is information that you paid for. So we do, of course, respect and expect you to be respecting the confidentiality of this information. It is for your eyes only. One of the other things I do see everybody doing an excellent job on is a requirement to have your full name on your registration when you do log in. There is, well, Calvert, I don't have your last name, but everybody else I do see is looking really good. From time to time, I'll let you know if there is anybody who does need to provide me your full name. It is a condition and requirement of your attendance. This, again, no recording of any kind is any recording, any video recording or audio recording is strictly prohibited, and something that will be a violation of our terms and conditions with that. Now, we also do, though, encourage you and appreciate you sharing your experience, not any of the content, not any of the pages of the workbook, but we do certainly encourage you to share your experience on social media. You are essentially going through a boot camp here. You're going to be spending 30 hours with Mark Minervini learning, and to survive that is really the feeling of a boot camp. There's plenty of people who are here as alumni. Every year, about 20% are alumni that come back, so you certainly know what I'm talking about. We will at times also send some poll questions out, so just be prepared for that. We'll, of course, make those announcements. And any questions when you do ask questions, I should say, Mark always does best with real questions, real situations, being specific about the content and the page number, not hypotheticals and general questions. That's not ever going to be a question that Mark's going to be able to answer easily, if at all, because every situation is very specific and unique. So I will just also give you that heads up. So if you're talking about a particular stock, obviously the ticker symbol, the specific date, things of that nature that you're trying to reference is a helpful hint for you. Also, I know about 50% of the attendees here are current private access members. And so we thank you for your business as well as your patronage, of course, and are excited to have you here. I do see a couple questions on the chat box asking about the private access service. So this is not a forum for us to be selling or promoting. If you do have any questions about that, you can certainly reach me privately or separately off hours, if you will, but that's not the purpose of this. This purpose is for you to be learning from Mark Minervini everything about his trading strategy. Market Smith also with Scott St. Clair will be representing Marcus Smith coming on the live trading day next Monday, November 21st, who will be doing a presentation on the Marcus Smith product by Investors Business Daily. They are our exclusive 2022 Master Trader Program official sponsor. And this event is also, this will be a chance for you to ask him questions as well. And this is the software that Mark uses himself. And of course, this is being brought to you today by Minervini Private Access. With that said, if you're ready to get started, we're right on time. And so let's get rolling with the 2022 Master Trader Program. Here we go.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Master Trader Program. I'm here with Mark Ritchie. Mark, welcome.
Thrilled to be here. Can't wait. Going to be a great event.
Yes, it is. Real quick, I'm going to go over a few things here, and we're going to move kind of quickly through as we prep here because we have a lot to cover, and we don't want to waste time on things that aren't curriculum related. This is our 13th annual MTP. I just want to introduce Mark Ritchie. Many of you know who Mark Ritchie is from either Twitter, from me, from MPA members, of course, and you may have read about him in Momentum Masters, the book that he's featured in. I just want to tell you real quick about Mark Ritchie, because one of the unique things about him, or one of the reasons I think that he is one of the best instructors that we possibly can have here for the MTP workshop, is not only does he work with me on a daily basis, and he's mastered my strategy almost as good as I have, probably the only person that in the world that I would say that is the closest to being me. And he attended the very first Master Trader program in 2010. And during that time, there was a triple-digit challenge. I basically put a challenge out to the members or the attendees that day to see who could get to 100%, a triple-digit return first. And Mark Ritchie was the first one to get there in about 6 months. He doubled his account. Since then, and again, I just want to point out that this isn't any reflection of any performance that we're offering, or we have a product or money management service or any products that we have. This isn't performance of those products or guaranteeing some type of performance going forward. But Mark Ritchie's own personal trading, and for a while he managed money for others. He started with about $100,000 and turned it into $25 million over that period since he came to the 2010 Master Trader program, and that's including his managed money, which kind of weighed it down quite a bit because there's some conservative investing in there as well. Came out to over 40% per annum return, and the really amazing thing about his results are that during that period he only had 3 down years, and the largest year down was 6%. So amazing drawdown. All right, now that I got you probably blushing, and but it's all true and you deserve it. I want to and Mark's going to talk about everything that how he did that, and how everything related to this strategy. And I'm going to tell you how I did all the results that you read about and all those things that you want to learn. We've got a lot of days and a lot of hours, so there's a lot to discuss and a lot to show you. I promise you we will cover everything A to Z. What I first want to do is I want to let you know how this curriculum is laid out, and to give you sort of the way that we're going to do this in chronological order. It's organized in a very logical fashion. First of all, you got to think of it as sort of starting from the very start of, say, a stock's trend, if you will, and then from there going through sort of, if you looked at a chart from left to right. You've got the stock moving up, then it goes through a basing period, it breaks out of the base. From there, it goes up, and maybe you have some sell signals. We're going to talk about all that in chronological order, but what we're going to do is we're going to start off from what I would call a satellite view, way up high, where we're going to just give you, and that's going to be the next couple sections that we start off with are going to be perspective, giving you a broad perspective. We're also going to start off with the more remedial stuff in the beginning, and it gets more and more advanced. As the days go on, it gets more and more advanced. So if you are advanced, I just want to say that in the very beginning, this is really important stuff, even though it may sound like things you've heard before or something that seems obvious. Really important stuff. The perspective is really, really important to have, so everything else has a reference point, has an anchor. All right, so we're going to start at a satellite view, then we're going to move down to an aerial view, and then from there we go to an overhead view. And I probably should also I know you guys, I'm going to bounce on a little bit here, but this is slide number 6. I'm going to move around a little bit. I might ask you to go to different slides in your workbook. But what I'm talking about here is how we're going to narrow it all the way down. And then we're going to come down to a microscopic view. Okay. And really get and fine tune things and get down to looking things like under a microscope. As a matter of fact, some have called my trading style surgical, where it gets very, very precise. And that's what specific entry point analysis is. It's taking all that information and boiling it down to right to the exact buy point on very specific entries and exits. I also, before I move on here, I want to just also say thank you once again for, I'm not sure how many years it is now, but I think it's 7 or 8 years that MarketSmith has been our sponsor, our official, and our sole sponsor, our exclusive sponsor of the Master Trader Program. We're going to have on the final day, on the live trading day, we'll have somebody from MarketSmith, and we'll also go over the MarketSmith screening, and I'll show you how I use it and how Mark uses it, and we're going to have tutorials on MarketSmith. So that's always fun. Every year I always learn something. Last year with Arusha from MarketSmith, I learned things that I've been using it for 30 years, and I still learned some things that were pretty neat. Also, Minute Private Access. This is brought to you by. So now, a few other things. We're going to go over a lot of charting, and that's the fun stuff. We're going to talk about a lot of things with fundamentals, and again, A to Z risk management is going to be a very, very voluminous section that, again, as we get to the later days and hours, it's going to get more and more complex. Some have said that this is like drinking from a fire hose, which I would agree. There's going to be a ton of information. So what you need to do is take a lot of notes, and that's why you have the workbook. Make those notes in your workbook as you're going along, so they relate to the charts and the things that we're talking about, and you can go back and you can refer to them. That's why you have those workbooks. Mark, you've attended the Master Trader Program for a decade, and you came to the very first one, and you've obviously made great use of the information. Any tips of how to approach this, or I'm coming from a different perspective as the the presenter, not the attendee. So I'm just curious if you have any other tips than taking notes in the workbooks and things like that.
Sure. And, obviously, thanks for the kind words earlier and for including me. I'm really looking forward to this. And, as I've made the point a number of times, I don't generally endorse anything I haven't bought myself. So to your point, I've attended, I think, 10 or 11 of these. I literally have stacks of the workbooks with notes in them, and before your books even came out, these were the roadmaps for me. And for a lot of you guys and gals out there, I would just encourage you, take a lot of notes, and then also write down some good questions, because we're going to have good opportunities for Q&A. My guess is 80% of the questions will actually be covered in the material. I've found over the years, even as I had questions, they wound up getting answered before we would get to the Q&A periods. This program is extremely thorough. And when Mark says it's surgical, you can't skip any of the steps. That would be the other thing I would say. So if you think, well, this feels remedial, that's like saying, I'm not going to take somebody's temperature before I operate on them. You have to get everything in proper order, and this has only gotten better every year, in my opinion. So if you're attending for the first time, in my view, you're probably attending the best one, because Mark has been taking his life's work and condensing it down over the years into one really incredible, potentially life-changing program.
Yeah, we have definitely refined this down to a near perfect fine point. And like I said, you're going to learn everything. So we're going to start right now. And again, we're going to start with just giving you a general perspective on certain things. And this is all going to come into play as we go forward. These are going to serve as your placeholders and your reference points, but very important to pay close attention here and take a lot of notes. So let's start we're going to go to page 7. And I just want to give you just a brief explanation of what my approach to the market is and my strategy, which I call specific entry point analysis. And the reason why is because everything boils down to a very, very specific set of criteria that everything leads up to and culminates to that buy point, that very, very precise buy point that it's been called surgical, like I said. So the goal of specific entry point analysis, the goal of myself and Mark each day that we trade, is the very first goal is to take minimal risk. That's done with our stop losses, our position sizing, and our timing. All right. The second thing is that we're looking to capture relatively large gains. And that the word relative is really important, because if you were a day trader, well, your losses would be very small because your gains would be very small. If you're a long-term investor, you have much larger gains. So in relation, risk versus reward is what we're looking to manage. And then to maximize the compounding, to optimize to where we're now turning over that edge enough times where we're going to reach our goal and we can maximize it. All right. That's a big, a really big point about turnover. A lot of people they don't want to turn the portfolio over. They say, here, turnover is bad. If you have an edge, turnover is great. You don't want to turn over the portfolio too much, but you want to turn over. The more you turn over your edge, the more you can compound. Very simple example is if you had a coin and you were getting $1 or let's say $2 on heads, and you were losing $1 on tails. What would your goal be? Like if you had that coin, and you said if you flip it, every 2 flips, you make a buck, right? So what would your goal, Mark? What would our goal be if we had a coin that we can do that with?
Flip that coin as many times as humanly possible.
Right. The more times we flip that coin, the more money we make, right? Because each time. So compounding and turning the money over is very important. So we're going to go through the selection process. We're going to go through trade execution, and we're going to go through position management with risk management. And then we're also going to talk about post analysis and looking at your results and some very unique ways that we slice and dice the math and the numbers. So there's 5 key areas that we're going to cover in this next 4 days of curriculum and a day of live trading. And we also have Q&A sessions that we're going to have in between, which we'll announce shortly. And so the first area is categories and catalyst. Okay. And the importance of that is that we need to know what type of situation we're dealing with, because a biotech is going to be treated differently than a turnaround situation. A typical growth stock is going to be treated differently than a cyclical. So there's certain what I call relative prioritizing. There's certain things that are important for some industries and they're not for others. So we're gonna go over that. Price and volume is going to be a big part of what we discuss. That's of course technical analysis. We're going to talk about company fundamentals, and then all this is going to culminate to entry and exit points. That's your timing of your buys and your sells with, of course, risk management. Now, company categories. There's basically, I boil down the types of companies into 6 areas. One is the market leader, which is that's the type of stock that we're most interested in. The second is what I call the top competitor. The third is the institutional favorite. And the fourth is the turnaround situation. These 4 encompass about 90% of all the trades that I make, and even Mark, that we make are going to be in these areas. And then there's cyclicals and there's everything else that are laggards and so forth. And you can get into situations where you have shorting opportunities, eroding. We can put a 7th and call them eroding, and those would be shorting opportunities. But the thing we want to talk about is these 4. And it's important that you have a reference point as to each one of them and sort of how to apply your analysis. So the first one, the market leader, some of the things that are important to understand is that right now we're in a tough market. We're in a bear market. So we would be looking for market leaders right now. We're looking for the first stocks to emerge, the ones that are hitting new highs first. These stocks are usually going to look expensive. And that's why a lot of people miss them or don't buy them and avoid them, because they have high PEs. They're trading near their 52-week highs. Sometimes when the market's trading near their lows. They're going to lead in RS, relative strength. They're going to lead in earnings per share. They're going to lead in sales and margins. These are the things that you want to see. You want to see them leading in. And many of them, up until, this last decade has been a decade of mega caps, which I think now are finally broken, and that the secular bull market in the mega caps, like the FANG stocks, is probably over, and we need to look for a shift. But historically, going back through my career and going back historically, if you were to look at history, the small and mid cap areas where you find a lot of the big leaders, a lot of the market leaders come from those smaller and mid cap, and that's where I'm always looking. If all things equal, I want the smaller and the mid caps. Now, a top competitor is going to be your number 2, your number 3, maybe even your number 4 company in an industry. And And a couple of things that are important about that, and I always do this little exercise. I'll usually shout out when we do this live. I'll say, "Give me colas." What's the first name that comes to your mind, Mark? What would be the first name?
Coca-Cola,
Coca-Cola. Okay. How about the second?
Pepsi,
Pepsi. All right. What's the third?
RC. I don't know.
RC Cola. Okay. How about fourth?
Yeah, boy.
It gets a little harder, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could come up with some, but after that, the list starts to drop off.
Right. So this is what in marketing, they call, I forget if it's the law of duality or they call it the first mover advantage. But basically, you're in an industry, it usually boils down to one, two, three, sometimes four names that dominate an industry ultimately. Even if you go back, you go back to the early 1900s, there was 300 car makers. It ultimately boiled down to the big three. You go back to the 1990s, there was tons and tons of internet companies and online and search engines and all these things. And it basically boiled down to Google's the big search engine. And, Yahoo at one time was a market leader. And all of a sudden, this competitor came, this top competitor, Google came, and Yahoo made some missteps, and they tried to be a little more than search, and Google went after search, and they ended up leapfrogging. And so what can happen is the number two or the number three could leapfrog the number one. And that's why you always want to pay attention to the top few stocks in the group. That's why in MarketSmith, Bill O'Neill designed it to where when you look at the chart, you can click and you can see the top 5 relative strength stocks. That's to look at those top leaders in the group. They'll tend to move together too. You'll tend to get the top leaders will tend to move somewhat together. And they may lag the leader in performance. For instance, again, we go back to we can boil this down. We used colas. We could say coffee. How about coffee? You'd probably say Dunkin' Donuts. Starbucks, maybe Tim Hortons, and then as you go down, it gets hard to really come up with a name, right? So home improvement. Going to be Home Depot, Lowe's, and then it starts going off of a cliff, as far as what is in your mind's eye or who's dominating the industry. So you go back to Lowe's and Home Depot. For when Home Depot first came out, they were the leader, clearly they're the leader, and then Lowe's was sort of riding in there like a NASCAR car riding in their draft, just waiting to take over. And then when Home Depot had a few missteps, they started having a lot of builders come in there, and it became sort of the less retail, and the stores started getting messy and they were dark. Lowe's had the bright stores. They were very clean, and they took advantage of that. And then Lowe's took over, and all of a sudden Lowe's started performing much better than Home Depot. If you go back, you can look at the chart so you can see exactly where that happened. So now let's move to the next one. Institutional favorite. Institutional favorite, a lot of these start as market leaders or top competitors, and then they become what you would refer to as the quality official growth stock. And that's when you got to be careful when they get to that point where you're so certain, that they can't go down. Amazon's a perfect example. You remember, Mark, where people were actually on Twitter betting me that Amazon wouldn't go down 30% in a couple of years. And now what's it down now?
50. Well, as of last Friday, peak to trough, it's more than 50.
50%, right? And very few people ever imagined that Amazon would be down 50%. Facebook's down. What's it down? 75% now?
75. Yeah. I would just add, I think the whole FANG group that we've, you and I've been talking about this all year, but they fit this number 3 sort of perfect, where, the classic sort of liquid loved institutional favorites, which we've traded and played, but now it looks like that, at least for this cycle, a lot of those names are still going the way of the 50-80 rule, which we're going to get to, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, these are quality companies. These are great companies. They are some of the biggest and best companies in the world. However, a great company doesn't make a great stock sometimes. Sometimes it makes a horrible stock. And that's when you get to the point where everybody owns them. We were just talking about this recently, Mark and I, in a Q&A session we have with our members about ownership, institutional ownership. And when you have 6,000 institutions that own it and everybody's loved it for the last 15 years, it's no secret anymore. It's no secret. When I was buying Amazon, it was in 1997. It was coming out of its very first base. And very few people even heard of it. And those that did hated it on Wall Street. They said they would never make money. As a matter of fact, during that time, the big prevailing idea or the word about the internet is that retail, no business could ever make money on the internet.